Today I would like to share my personal story of how I became aware of narcissistic abuse. And I think everybody went through a different kind of process of how they became aware of it. Maybe a friend made you aware of it. Maybe a coworker made you aware of it. Maybe you did your own research on the internet and then stumbled over the subject. My story is a little bit different. And I would like to share my experience now of how I became aware of narcissistic abuse about 10 years ago, and how it all played out. And it didn't start out in a relationship. My experience with narcissistic abuse actually started out at the workplace. And it was a pure coincidence that I actually noticed the signs. And what happened back then was, as some of you may already know, I work in the Hollywood film industry. And ever since I was a little kid, I wanted nothing more but to work in Hollywood, to make movies, to meet all the people that inspired me back in the days as a kid, my favorite actors, directors, you name it. And you know the saying, never meet your idols. I had the privilege to work with a couple of my idols, some of my childhood heroes and role models. Very few of them were a disappointment, but many of them were also awesome people. I'm really, really grateful for that experience and their kindness. So how did I become aware of narcissistic abuse? So what happened was I had my very first paid gig behind the camera. And when I received the screenplay to read, there was a villain character. After doing some research about the director, I saw people that he had worked with in the past, and there was one particular actor who used to be one of my childhood heroes. And let me tell you, as a teenager, I had a huge crush on him. I'm not going to say any names, but he was also the villain in a huge TV hit series that probably every one of you knows. Again, I'm not saying any names because it wouldn't be fair. And I saw that they were working together in the past. And knowing that he plays such a perfect villain, I thought, you know what? He would be a great choice for that character that I was just reading about. I didn't mention anything to the director. It was just a thought I had when I was reading the script for the first time. But maybe there was some weird, manifestation going on, and guess who they cast out of thousands of actors in town? That guy. The inner child or inner teenager inside of me was, of course, completely starstruck at the time. I'm not starstruck anymore. I'm a professional now, but at the time it was my first paid gig as a professional in the film industry. And I was like, oh my God, is that even really happening? I get to meet that guy that I used to look up to when I was a kid. Yeah, we started working together. And over time, I noticed how this actor that I admired so much was staring at me. But in a way that I would always notice, even from afar. And even while I used to be such a huge fan of his, after a while, it really kind of gave me the creeps. I don't know. It was strange. I'd never seen that type of behavior before from a person. And he was even staring at me when he was talking to the director, while his focus should have been 100% on the director, making eye contact with him. So again, that was strange. At the time, I tried to make sense out of it. Yeah, and I was in a group of INTJ women on Facebook. If you know anything about the MBTI personality types, I'm an INTJ, which stands for introvert, intuitive, thinking, and judging. It's a pretty rare breed. There are not many INTJ women out there. I think it's like 1-2%, something like that, out of the population, as they say. I always thought it made me a little bit, socially inept to understand people and their behavior. So I thought if anybody can help me, it's probably other INTJ women who would know what to do in a situation like that and who could maybe explain to me what is going on. So I was telling them about that, about the experience I had with this actor, and one woman commented, there's something that is called the predatory stare. I was like, predator? I only know the movie Predator, but what is she talking about? So, of course, I did my research on the internet, yeah? Predatory stare, predator, what is that? And this whole box started opening up, yeah? Predatory behavior, narcissism, narcissistic abuse, psychopathy, the black eyes of a sociopath. I remember that alien picture that was shown in that article, and yeah, it gave me the creeps, really. It was this shudder running down my spine. It was creepy. And then I knew what was going on. Now, the actor, he didn't do anything to me, yeah? He never really made an approach or anything, so like I said, yeah, it was, in that sense, harmless. I just noticed him staring. But he wasn't even my biggest problem. I hadn't even realized that I was already trapped in a cycle of narcissistic abuse coming from one of my constant co-workers. The enemy was sitting right next to me at all times. That guy, he actually made it happen that I got hired on this project. We met on an independent production on a short film. That was the first time he saw me, and he started grooming and love bombing me. He gave me all these compliments about my looks that I never really believed in. And when he noticed that compliments on my looks and outer appearance or beauty whatsoever, whatever he was talking about, didn't work on me, he started complimenting my work. And he knew then that those kind of compliments would get my attention. Because I was proud of my work. Yeah, I was just starting out and I was trying to do my best. And yeah, he just picked up on that, and that's how he was able to manipulate me to trust him. There were people in town who warned me of him, but I didn't see it at the time. Once again, I didn't know what narcissistic abuse was at the time. I didn't know about the cycle of abuse. I didn't know that I was being groomed and love-bombed right then and there at the workplace. This guy, he did the same thing to many people who were brand new in the industry. Because people who are brand new in the industry, who are young, maybe a little bit naive still, they don't know the rules of the game, they are easy to manipulate. There were people that I know of that he abused to the point that they even left the industry forever. They were so broken down after he had been through with them, and I would not allow him to do that to me. So once I got my first paid gig through him, we worked for the same company on a couple of projects together. And he followed the typical cycle of narcissistic abuse, yeah? At the beginning of every project, I was being idolized. While I was trapped with him at the workplace, on set, I was being devalued and abused and attacked. Then I was discarded because the project was over. Then at the start of the next project, he would slip into my private messages again on Facebook and start idolizing me again. And the cycle repeated. Project after project after project. But over time, I noticed that the things he was saying about me in the devaluation phases didn't make sense. Like at the end of every project, maybe a week or two after the end of every project, he would go on Facebook and slip into my private messages again and tell me what a horrible person I am, that nobody liked working with me, that if I kept behaving the way I was behaving, nobody would ever want to work with me again, and that there were complaints coming from the editing room. In the beginning, I really took his comments to heart, and I started believing that I was this horrible person, and my voice became smaller and smaller and smaller. I felt so intimidated. And that way he could abuse me even harder and further. He had me under complete emotional and psychological control at work. He would sometimes literally walk into my path and bump into me and tell me then that I was standing in his way. But it didn't make sense to me what he was saying over time, because if I were such a horrible person, as he says, and there are so many complaints coming in at the company and from the editing room, how come the same company keeps hiring me over and over and over and over again? Telling me what a great job I'm doing. The same director really giving me compliments about my hard work and efforts and me as a person. It didn't make sense. And you have to pay attention to these signs, the things they want you to believe and the things that are the actual reality. That includes everyone around you. Don't just focus on this one person, what they say and how they treat you. Focus on the bigger picture. Because with a narcissist, there is no reasoning. There is no having a decent conversation. There is no respect. But if you get it from everyone else, if you can have a normal conversation with the people around you, if you receive the respect that you deserve from the people around you, then how can this one person be right? Right? So remembering what these INTJ women told me back then, I was doing more research on sociopathy and narcissistic abuse. And then I realized, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening at my workplace. Not with the actor, but with that guy. And let me tell you, once I got the insight and I got onto the next project with him, I knew what I had to do. Don't react. I didn't react to his provocations anymore. I stayed out of his lane and I didn't even make eye contact. And let me tell you, it drove him nuts. He was losing control over me. And for the first time after over a year, I had a very good time. Of course, that was the last time I worked with him because I had no energy left or intention or willingness to ever accommodate him again and become fake myself in the process. I reported the coworker for narcissistic abuse at the workplace, and he had been investigated. I was told by some coworkers that I was definitely not the first person to report him, so that gave me the encouragement to open my mouth and to say something about the situation. And I was hoping that maybe in the future it would also help other victims of his to, find a voice and open up about the abuse that he was putting people through in our industry. Now, the irony of it all is that months later, after recovering from that experience, I ran into my future narcissistic boyfriend. I knew what narcissistic abuse looks like at the workplace by then, but not how it plays out in an actual relationship. But that is another story.